It was a sunny and hot afternoon. I had just entered the city of Douala in the West African nation of Cameroon. Ever since my arrival into the country, landing in its capital city Yaoundé, I had been warned of the hot climate of Douala. The heat was so intense, so much so that breathing felt like swallowing fire, each inhale scorching the throat and each exhale dragging out what little strength remained. The streets were extremely busy with people going about their various businesses. I pulled out my small notebook. In one of the pages, I had noted the name of a hotel, recommended by a friend. I approached a parked taxi and asked the driver who was sitting inside if he could take me there. He nodded and stuck two fingers up. "What's that?" I asked. "2,000, the man responded. I made a quick calculation converting into dollars. It corresponded to about $4. "Okay, we can go," I said and jumped inside beside him. 2 hours later, after the hustle and rumble from intense traffic, mostly due to bad roads, there it was. An immense structure, visibly in need of some rehabilitation works. The Hotel Grandeur was a giant in its neighborhood. 8 stories built on about 300 square meters. It had no other close competitor. Obviously a legend of the late 80s or early 90s. My friend had precisely praised the personnel who somehow was used to welcoming and entertaining expatriates. They will treat you well, and as a foreigner, they know exactly where in town you should go and where not to. I didn't intend to stay long anyway, not long enough to play around. I had tried to do some research on the hotel online, but there was not much to read apart for some few pictures, probably dating from years ago, given the dilapidated painting I now saw. However, I was there now, and I just needed to move in and honor my reservation. The receptionist was a male in his late 20s or early 30s, named Jean-Paul. He registered and offered to accompany me to my room on the first floor. The place was mostly deserted, except for some few people using the swimming pool at the back, whose shouting and laughter could be heard through the open door leading to the backyard. As we climbed the stairs and engaged a poorly lighted corridor, I noticed some of the doors were covered with dust and almost invisible cobwebs. "Other customers around?" I asked. "Yes, sir, mostly business people who come here to buy. They are off for their various businesses and will be back soon when the sun sets down," he said, with a tone that felt like he was trying to convince me to stay. We reached a door at the extreme end of the corridor and stopped. He opened it, and I followed him inside. The room was a complete contrast to the outer view of the building. Everything was neatly arranged and the bed was large with clean sheets. "Will you need something else? We sell drinks at the bar, and I can serve you here. There is a restaurant across the street where you can eat local plates, and even foreign ones too," he asked. "No, I'm fine, thank you. You work here alone?" I became curious when he proposed to serve me himself. "Not really, my colleague will replace me in 2 hours' time. He will be here for the night," he said. Technically, that still meant he was all alone for the day. I tipped him off and crashed on the bed to have some rest. It was complete darkness when I finally woke up. I glanced at my watch, past 7 p.m. I took a bath and stepped out to have a stroll. The scanty streets were now alive with busy drinking spots here and there, surrounded by smoking vendors of roasted meat and fish. I sat at the bar directly opposite the hotel and ordered for a beer. With the sun now settled, the atmosphere was cooler with light drizzles of rain, but didn't stop people who kept adding up gradually. The music became louder as the night grew older. After a good plate of roasted fresh fish and 2 bottles of beer, I glanced at my watch. 10:39 p.m. I decided it was time to call it for the night and went back to my room. The music was heard from there, but only a faint sound with closed windows. I sat on the bed to make some calls, after which, for the first time since I had booked in, I noticed a TV set hung on the wall adjacent to the bed. I walked to it and turned it on. A few broken local channels showed up and nothing else. I undressed and turned off the light to go to bed. As I was diving on the bed, my eyes caught sight of something at the window. It was the silhouette of a woman. Yes, I wasn't mistaken after brushing my face with my palm to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. A woman was standing outside my window and staring directly into my room. I turned on the light, went to the window, and opened the blind. But she was gone. She just disappeared into thin air. A cold chill traveled down my spine. I looked again, but no one could be seen there. I turned off the light and went to bed. Hopefully the beer in my system was going to help me sleep off quickly. I dragged the sheets to cover my head, but as curiosity was already settled, I threw a glance at the window, and there she stood again, dressed in white with long hairs that fell on her shoulders. I stood up. "Hello, who's that?" I called out, but no response. "Can I help you, madame?" I asked again, still no response. I moved to the window and shifted the blind. This time she didn't disappear. It was a woman in her late 20s or so, dressed in a kind of white gown like a waitress or something of that sort. I opened the window panel and a cold chill ran over my entire body. She was beautiful in a strange way, with a makeup that was almost dripping off her face due to the drizzles. "Can I help you?" I gathered my wits and asked again. "Oh, sure you can. I got locked up out here," she said. "I work here, and I was cleaning up the balcony when a client moved out and locked me up." She explained further. "I see. You can come in. I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and went to open the balcony door. As she stepped inside, the light blurred, went off, and instantly came back on. She stood right in the middle of the room, a perfect structure. Her beauty was captivating and magnificent. "I'm Katie," she said as she turned to face me. "Oh, I'm Patrick," I replied, taking the hand she stretched towards me for a handshake. "I've never seen you here before," she said, her eyes scanning me up and down. "Yes, it is the first time I'm staying here," I answered. She had an air of authority about her. She looked at me then, all of a sudden it seemed she was looking through me. "Are you Jean-Paul's replacement for the evening?" I asked, mentioning the receptionist who booked me in earlier that afternoon. "Yes," she replied after hesitating for a second or two. "I hope you're enjoying your stay." She quickly changed the topic. "Well, aside the scorching heat, I can't complain," I said now, wondering if she had any intentions to leave. "If that's your wish, then I'll leave you," she said, her eyes clocked into mine. "It's okay, feel free to stay as long as you wish. I was just wondering if you didn't need to go back to work," I said at the same time, wondering how she could read my thoughts. "Thank you," she said and turned to sit on the lone chair in the room behind her. I noticed for the first time she had no shoes. "And no, I don't need to go back to work, except that's what you want?" she said. This time her eyes had transformed to two dark holes on her head. It was the second time she was suggesting that everything depended on me. What exactly did she mean? Was it some kind of invitation to spend the night together? "Are you married, Mr. Patrick?" She broke the silence. Yes, I'm married," I responded. She looked a bit disappointed by my answer. The cynical smile on her face disappeared for a second. Then she seemed to take back control of herself and looked up at me. The smile was back on her face. This time it looked even mysterious. Her long hairs casted a shadow on her face that even made her look frightening from the angle I was standing. "Anna is a lucky woman," she said, and got up from where she was sitting. Those words blew off my mind. Goosebumps occupied my whole body in seconds. She walked past me towards the balcony door. "I thought you'd rather leave this way," I said, pointing to the other door that led into the corridor outside. "Never mind," she said, and before I could ask her how she knew about Anna, my wife, she opened the door and disappeared outside. I followed her outside on the balcony, but I only heard a door opened and closed. What did I just see? I suddenly felt released, like I was under some kind of captivity in her presence. I went to bed, leaving the lights on. The next morning I woke up with a heavy head, the alcohol from last night probably manifesting its last effects. I had to leave early because I had a bus to catch that morning. I showered and gathered my few belongings and stepped out of the room. At the reception desk stood Jean-Paul. He was writing something in a large exercise book. I was surprised to see him there. "You start this early?" I asked, placing my bag on the desk. "Hey, Mr. Patrick, I hope you had a great night." His smile was wide. "Well, not bad," I replied. "Your colleague already left?" I asked. "Oh no," he answered, his head buried in the book in front of him, concentrated on whatever he was writing inside. "Ah, I see. So where's she?" "I would like to tell her goodbye." He stopped what he was doing and looked up at me with surprise all over his face. "Her?" he asked. "Who's her?" "Your colleague who replaced you last night." "Wait." I brainstormed for a second or two, trying to recall her name. "Katie. Yes, Katie. That's her name," I said. At that moment, a door opened behind him, and a young man stepped out of a dark room. "Oh, that's him, my colleague who worked last night. No Katie here," Jean-Paul said, pointing at the newcomer. "Wait, a girl stepped into my room last night from the balcony claiming that a customer locked her out there while she was doing some cleanup. I saw her with my own two eyes. We even spoke for like 30 minutes before she left. She said she was your replacement." I was visibly annoyed by his attitude by now. "I'm sorry, sir, please don't be angry. But Louis here and I are the only two receptionists who work here, and there is no one named Katie who works here," he said. Okay. I maybe didn't hear her well. Just sign me out, I need to be on my way," I said, putting an end to the discussion. Louis, his colleague, who was still standing some few meters away listening to us, came closer and spoke to Jean-Paul in a local language. Jean-Paul then turned to me after their brief exchange. "Can you describe how she looks, sir?" he said. I gave him a brief description of the girl. Louis went back into the room he had earlier emerged from. He came back after some few minutes holding a huge book that looked like a photo album. He opened and went through the pages one after the other. Then he stopped and took out a photo and handed it to Jean-Paul, who cleaned it up with a tissue and came closer to me. "Have a look at this picture," he said, handing it to me. I immediately recognized Katie as one of the three persons on the photo. "Here she is," I said, pointing to the person in the middle. "Are you sure, sir?" Jean-Paul asked. "Hey, are you insinuating I'm crazy?" I say that's the same girl who walked into my room last night and told me her name is Katie. I was screaming at him, and I didn't even realize it. Please, don't be angry. I'm sure you're speaking the truth. If not, how would you know her name?" Jean-Paul was visibly trembling by now. I almost felt sorry for making him feel that bad. "You see, sir, this is Mr. Francis Hino, proprietor of the Grandeur Hotel, and here is his wife, Mrs. Jeanette Hino. In the middle is Catherine Hino, their daughter and only child." Jean-Paul was sweating. "The reason I kept asking if you are sure of what you're saying is because Catherine died 17 years ago. She fell from the balcony of this hotel's 5th floor, probably an accident. My legs gave up under the weight of the rest of my body. I quickly leaned on the reception desk, but it was not enough to hold me. I slipped on. Both men rushed and helped me up, each holding me on my arms. That couldn't be possible, I thought. She was right there in front of me yesterday. We even shook hands, and she did something strange. She said Anna was lucky to have me. Anna is my wife, and I don't know how she knew her name." I was the one trembling now. Through the years, some stories were heard that claimed that her death may not have been accidental, that her wealthy father sacrificed her for money rituals. Some customers often complain of footsteps or screams in corridors, but no one ever saw her before you, Jean-Paul said. I got up and asked him to show me where to sign. He did. I signed and made for the door. I was leaving the place never to return again.